Hello and welcome back to my channel, Handheld Computing. Today we're having a look at another of the Palm OS devices, this time with a colour screen, the M505. Let's get into it. Released 2 years after the very successful Palm 5 and based on a very similar design, it is easy to see the similarities between these two. The M505, while it is slightly shorter, is a little bit thicker and slightly heavier in the hand. There are other noticeable differences. For example, the side slots on the Palm 5 are the same size on each side, but they're not on the 505. This means that while you can pop a stylus in the right side, you cannot pop one in the left, so you can't reverse the cover and pen, making it left-handed, and Palm was criticised for this at the time. Add to that the new universal connector, and you can't use any of the previous accessories. As you'll see, an original Palm stylus is too long, so it sticks out at the top. The reverse of the case is screwed in on the M505, which actually makes it a lot better as a second-hand purchase for altering the aging battery. In addition, we've gained an SD card slot for adding extra storage. There's also a vibrate function now with the alarm, and the power button illuminates as an indicator. Let's set it up and have a look around. Stick with English. Yes, for sure. We're not bothered about setting the time or date, and we'll hit done. Smashing. So there we are on the all screen, so we can see all the programs available. I'm going to just pop the Palm 5 up next to it, and we'll just pop that backlight on as well. Lovely. So as you can see, most of the programs are actually the same. We've still got the address book, the calculator, we've got the date book, we've got mail, hotsync, graffiti, preferences, security, welcome, and to do. We have, however, gained a couple of new programs, so we're going to have a look at those first of all. I'm not going to run through all the standard programs today. If you want to have a look at how they work, here's a link to my Palm 5 review. They're all pretty much the same. There's only very subtle changes. So let's pop a memory card in and have a look at card info and see what that does. As you can see, inserting the card immediately brings up the card's contents. If we go back to the main menu and hit all, it doesn't display any of the programs that are on the card. Instead, you have to cycle through until you reach the card option, so it's kept quite separately. Opening card info. So you can see it reads the card and it shows us a little bit of information about the card itself, how much free space there is, and the type of card it is. The top button, it looks like it should be a drop-down box, which suggests that perhaps the add-on software designed to handle the SD card will handle more than one. Maybe we'll test that at some point. Let's have a look at clock. Clock is pretty basic. It is a clock, as described. We've got an on-off button for the alarm. Tapping it brings up the time options. Again, very basic. We can't set to the minute. Going back into that, we can then turn the alarm off if we wish, down at the bottom, and we get a little indicator to say that there is an alarm. Pressing menu, we've got a couple of display options, so we can show the day of the week in our clock, and we can show the date. So we'll add that. We've got an alarm preferences. This just brings up the various sounds you can have. The piezoelectric speaker will basically only create beeps and boops, and the high volume isn't that high. So it's adequate, but it's not the best alarm ever. Going to the preferences, set time and date. While this takes you to the preference menu, weirdly, you can't select any of the preferences, only the ones that are there. And this also means we can't, at the moment, select whether or not we wish the alarm to vibrate. Just seems a bit basic. For me, this is all too basic. I prefer to use a different clock program called Big Clock. I'll pop a link to it below. So as the alarm goes off, as you can see, we get the indicator light up at the top, the sound, which is wonderful. We've got a couple of options. OK gets rid of it, snooze snoozes it, and go to will display any messages if there are any. I've snoozed it, and what you'll see is up in the top corner is a blinking indicator, and this, if you tap on it, will bring up any notifications that are waiting for you to deal with. So at this point you can tick them to get rid of them, snooze them, clear all, and done. Super. So next up we have a new application called Notepad. So the first time you launch it, it will launch this screen to tell you that it's a screenwriting note. After that, it'll launch it to a new note. So we'll just come out and go back in so you can see that. And what it does, it sets it up with the time at the top and the date on the right hand side. You can of course change it by writing in the graffiti area. So we'll just put note, and then you can draw on the screen. Scrolling down, you get a little bit more space, so you're not limited to one screen. And then you've got a couple of different options. Obviously done is done. Create new, you can delete it. And then at this side, we can choose the thickness of the line, or we can choose the eraser. Once you're done with that, you can select a category as usual up at the top, hit done, and it stores it. So as you can see, it takes us back to the standard list view, which we see in other applications. We have the usual menu options. We can beam a category. We can choose a font. Obviously that only affects the list view. We've got a couple of preferences, so we can sort manually. We can choose an alarm sound. Because the alarm sound is set in the application, you can't set separate alarm sounds for separate memos. It's all the same alarm sound. And of course, confirmation for note delete or not. And the last one, of course, an about. So there we are, Notepad 1.1. Looking at the preferences, if we pop them side by side, you can see actually we've got more preferences now than we did previously. And this is because there are more functions, including the internet, sort of. So most of the options are the same. We can choose which buttons do what, and we can set a pen shortcut. So we can have an upstroke on the pen, bring up graffiti help, or turn on and off, beam, and things like that. We can choose what we want from each of the buttons. And we'll move on. So then we've got the connection settings. So we've got a couple more options now because there are a couple more devices available and they're built into ROM. We've got the time and date, which we saw before. The digitizer, of course, we can set formats. Under general, this is where we can set the vibrate function if we want it to vibrate when alarms go off. If not, of course, you can turn that off. Below that, we've got the network preferences. Owner, obviously. Phone, there's nothing in here at the moment. I assume you need other software adding before this does anything, and it's unlikely we're going to. These are your graffiti shortcuts, same as on the Palm 5. And last but not least, for web clipping. Of course, the web clipping servers got shut down in 2004, so this isn't going to be very useful. The SD card is great for storing extra programs. With only a few programs installed, it's quite fast to move to the card, in fact, almost unnoticeable. But if we add a lot of programs, like so, you begin to get a noticeable lag while it reads the card. And that's because the operating system has to assess all the programs on that card. So as you can see, there are quite a few programs in here, but there's not an inordinate amount, given that there are over 5,000 applications available. Once in here, if you swap backwards and forwards, it's fine. It's quite quick because it's committed what's on the card to memory. But should you bother to open a different application first, let's open clock. You'll see, first of all, we've got a much greater lag than we had before, and that's because it's now swapping from opening the card to opening clock. There we are. And next time we go back to the card, you guessed it, we've got that long wait all over again. So the software that handles the SD card isn't particularly efficient. It is useful because obviously you can store more applications and you can create backups on the move. Let's talk about this color screen. It's a 16-bit capable of showing 65,000 colours, but the colours themselves are of poor saturation, even in good lighting conditions. And with only 160 by 160 pixels, you can see we're never going to get amazing clarity. Don't get me wrong, you're not going to be using this to show holiday pics to all your buddies, especially in 2021, but it is very poor saturation. The big advantage of having that front-lit reflective screen is that in direct light, you don't need the backlight on. So actually having a brighter light source means we get a clearer view. So this obviously will improve the battery life enormously because then you don't need the backlight on, but given that you're mostly going to use this indoors, you're mostly going to have that backlight on. Under normal lighting conditions, put next to an M505, you can see the contrast is much better on the M505. Add to that the fact that as you move closer to the screen, you can actually make out the little individual pixels, and as you can see, there are black lines between the pixels, which are not present on this and are due to the color screen. This means that this is much more likely, or I find much more likely, to give you eye strain than the black and white version. So while the color is nice, I overall would prefer the black and white. One nice touch is that the backlight itself illuminates the graffiti pad, so these are backlit, and this means that it's easier to write in the dark. So there we have it, the M505. In all honesty, while the M515 is better in terms of screen brightness and it has double the RAM, I still wouldn't go for either of these two devices. Personally, I like the 500 because of the black and white screen. It makes it easy on the eyes, good for reading by, and it's got a really good battery life. If you did want a colour screen, then I would suggest looking at the Sony Cliés of that period, which have double the pixel density at 320 by 320. Some of them use similar screen technology, so you've still got that outdoor visibility and no need for backlight all the time. Sure, they're a bit bigger, but actually the screens are just so much nicer to use. That's my 2p anyway. If you've got any thoughts or comments, please don't forget to put them down below. Hit subscribe, press that bell button so you make sure you hear my next video, and if you've liked it, give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.